Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I'm proud to offer premium wireless for just $15 a month. And I'm proud that we have thousands of 5-star reviews from customers like Dan D. in New York, who writes, "I am satisfied customer. How can this only be $15? He wrote it in all caps. I needed you to feel it, like he feels it. I hope I did that justice, Dan. And I hope that you try Mint too at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months required. New subscribers only. Renew for 12 months to lock in savings. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See mintmobile.com.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
Hey everyone, Matt here from P1 with Matt and Tommy, the only Formula One podcast you need ahead of the brand new season. We'll be here every week with reaction to the latest news on and off the track, previews of the biggest races on the calendar, and everything you need to know about the fastest sport on Earth. So whether you're a seasoned veteran or you've just started watching the new season of Drive to Survive, we've got you covered. Absolutely everyone is welcome. Are you ready? Well, let's go. Search P1 in your podcast app to subscribe and listen now.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Hello and welcome to Short Tales. For today's episode, I am delighted to be joined by my sweetheart of a friend, Tom Reed. Welcome, Tom.
You're a sweetheart of a friend too.
Stop it.
It's just two good buds hanging out.
Two good buds having a good chat.
I said that before we started. I was like, I love listening to you and Sean talk. It's just nice to hang out and chat.
Yeah.
It's good. We do hang out outside of podcasts.
Yeah, that should be noted. Yeah,
this isn't the only we only hang out when there's a microphone in front of us.
But that bloody Sean's always around.
Oh, so
my
rude
Lord.
of him, bastard.
But no, seriously, thank you for joining me. And yeah, as you said, obviously we have numerous chats about writing and story on and off mic. Literally, we were just deconstructing Batman about a minute ago before we could record.
Always.
But I'm particularly excited for this one because I think you've actually come up with this really interesting topic for us to chat about, where it's sort of like looking at story in a completely new lens that I think a lot of writers get so fixated on the writing side of things, and as they should, they're writers, but to me, one thing that I love about this side of stuff is story and the power of story and the universality of story, I guess.
Absolutely.
So all that is a big lead up for you to introduce what we're discussing today. So Tom, what are we discussing today?
We're talking about storytelling in the everyday. So talking about and looking at, I guess, how I view stories outside of writing and how people can tell stories and use stories. And I think more the oral kind of storytelling.
I love that.
Is, I guess, what our focus will be today, because some of the stuff I'm talking about is more about talking in person. And we were joking before that, not everyone is going to be that great. Well, not everyone starts out that great gifted storyteller that everyone knows.
Yeah.
But everybody can be. You might not have the same, grappling ability of language that like a Shakespeare had, but you can have a crack.
Yeah.
And everyone can get there. It's where you're not every person who runs is going to be Usain Bolt, but you can all run 100 meters.
Love that.
You can train to run 100 meters quickly.
Yeah, that's it. And even in my own work, so obviously I teach kids creative writing.
Yeah.
And you get some kids who come in and they're there because they fucking love writing.
Yeah.
They love reading, they love writing, they love story.
Do you bully them? Because I would know.
Oh, mate, put it right in their face. No.
Yeah,
they get enough of that at school.
Oh, you book nerd. You got no friends. All your friends are book and your name's Tom Reed.
I usually just say welcome, give them a hug and be like, you have found your people. But then we get some who are like, they don't give a stuff about writing.
No.
Mum or dad has decided this would be good for them, or they've just, I don't know, they're just looking for extracurricular stuff. Maybe they just want them to be babysat for an hour, let's be honest. But the beauty of it is you get them come in and hopefully they know how to write. That's always a great start.
That's a good start.
But, it really, you can for after a few weeks, you're like, I think I'm starting to crack them a little bit. I think they're getting into this now.
Feels good, hey?
Yeah. And that's the point we always start with, where it's don't give a stuff about spelling. Don't give a stuff about grammar. Don't even really care if their ideas are any good at all. Yeah. It's more just to give them that confidence in their ideas. So I will tell them they're great. If they could give, I could say, what do you got for a story? And then first week, they're like, oh, I don't know, nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, you're like, all right, well, let's just cram two things together. So let's say your character's a pirate, but they're on the moon or whatever, And then you're like, what happens next? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And you're like, come on, you can think of something. Their boat's in a crater or whatever. You're like, oh, that's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Yes, you've got to keep going there, blah, 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 blah. And it's so great to see that once they start to realize, hey, I can do this.
That little piece that unlocks and you're like, oh yeah, I got you.
Yes,
Because you remember that moment, I don't know about you, but you remember that moment, I know I do, when you were like, whether you're a teenager or a kid, where like someone unlocked you. Like someone found that bit for you and you're like, oh, I know what that is.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Mine was, I reckon 17. Which is late. It possibly happened earlier, but the thing that I remember that was like, oh, this is what I'm going to do is I remember doing media studies in year 11 or 12, and we had to do this assignment where we had to make a short film. There was like options. We had to could make a short film, a website, a magazine, do a photography board, something media based. And the media studies teacher at the time, who's great teacher, Mr. Boyle, he basically, I'd written a script for what I wanted to make my film.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I'd written it and I put it away, and then we came back in the next week and I was like, oh, I don't know if I like that idea. And I wrote 5 ideas.
Oh,
and
awesome.
hadn't filmed any of them.
Okay.
Because I was like, oh no, I think I've got a better idea.
Yeah.
And because I'd been like, I'm going to make movies. I want to be a filmmaker.
Yeah.
And then when I got to the 5th idea, he's like, well, look, the deadline's running out. So I think just go with this one. He's like, I don't think you want to be a filmmaker though. I think you want to be a writer. And I was like,
very good.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
having that thing of like you've finished the idea,
yeah,
and you've immediately moved on.
Yeah.
If you want to be a director, you cannot. That's not how directing works.
Now you're
my
obsessed
friend.
with that idea and making it into reality. I also love that. It's like a light bulb moment, but someone else has reached over and switched the light on.
Oh, the amount of times in my life where someone else has been like, that's this. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
It's one of those things where someone who is like resisting something, and even that thing when you're saying, you don't care about spelling or grammar or those kind of things. Yeah. I am one of those obnoxious wankers who's like, just make words up, man.
Hell yeah.
Grammar sucks. Like,
But like it was all made up originally anyway.
Right?
Fucking, that's what Willie Shakespeare was doing.
Right, Willie Shakespeare was like, what about this word? Betwixt. How's that sound? It sounds good.
And the masses are like crazy for it.
Betwixt?
Yeah, whoa.
He put "bur" and "twixt."
What's he going to drop next?
Therefore.
Oh
my
my fucking lord.
Can you imagine that if that was the way it was done, that Will Shakespeare like walked out to the town square and was like, they're like, oh, he's got a new word today.
Yeah.
He's just like throwing words out to the crowd.
Bubble.
Oh my god! I had money on a double letter. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, I'm one of those people that's very much, and it's a little insufferable where I'm just like, people are like, oh, is that the correct way to use it? And like in professional context, obviously there is a right way to spell words, and there are words that are real words. But like, I'm a big believer that there are words that don't exist that infuriate me.
Oh, that's great.
And I'm trying to remember one off the top of my head, and I cannot. It's one of those ones that it's like, I believe the word irregardless should exist.
Right.
And it doesn't exist. And I use it all the time. And someone's like, that's not a word. I'm like, yeah, but it feels like it should be.
Right.
So just keep using it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm very much a thing of, if that's what gets you in, just have fun with it.
Yeah.
Make words up, play with grammar. Obviously, if you there are rules that you need to follow for various things. And, I know that we were once, it was probably a nightmare for you guys, that we published a short anthology of horror stories and we shared them, and I submitted mine, and either you or Sean was like, Tom, you can't have every sentence on a new line.
Yeah, that was me. I had to edit that one.
Yeah, I was like, I'm sorry.
But it read beautifully because it was like this cross of poetry and prose. Like it actually, again, I hadn't seen that before. So editing it, I'm trying to put it into prose rules, but you're like, no, it's not really prose. It's not really poetry. Like it's somewhere in between. But I do like that. But like, that's good. It's like, even, saying about the words thing, I remember 2 things. Obviously, Dr. Seuss, crazy for crazy words.
100%.
Look at that guy go. So like, there's a clear example there, but also this fantasy writer I used to love as a kid, David Eddings. I can't remember what series of books it was. He had a number of different sort of series.
Is there one about a knife?
There was one about a knife, yes.
I can see a cover and it's purple and there's a gem. It's a solid book.
Yeah, it's a chunker.
If you threw that at a kid, that kid would die.
Yeah, you're like, hey kid, read this.
Hey, book nerd, catch.
But I don't know if it was in that book or one of his others, but I remember he had a character who had the habit of making up words, and people say that's not a word, and the character would say there's like a little boy character, and go, do you know what I'm trying to say? Then they're like, yeah, well then it's a word.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? How good is that?
Absolutely.
Like word after meaning is if it's conveying a meaning, it's doing the job of a word. That's the whole point of words.
You know what I mean? If I say to you, I'll do this, irregardless of whatever, you know exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
The word's regardless, and that exists, but irregardless just sounds like I care less.
Yeah, I know, I get it. And like, even the way, like, even dictionaries have to update the meanings of words because the culture of the word changes. Literally is starting to not mean literally. Like, we use it too often in other contexts.
And one thing that I'm one of those people too that when people are like, that's not what it means. It's like, yeah, but you know what they mean. Like, shut up. I don't. If you want to use literally, figuratively, go for it.
Go crazy.
I don't. Yeah. Well, if that's what gets you there, go nuts.
Right.
You know?
But that's it, because context obviously plays a part.
100%.
So it's not like the word standing alone on its own in a dictionary. There's all this context around it, which is telling you the meaning of the word.
Yeah.
Well, for my moment, similar to you, I think it was when I was like, I want to say year 10. I was at the senior campus. So I'm going to say year 10. I can't remember my teacher's name, but same as you, was like a teacher who basically sort of pushed me a little bit, right? Yep. So obviously I was that book nerd getting smacked in the face with a book who had no friends.
Oh, I'm sorry. Damo, if I'd have been there, I would have been your friend.
Oh, thanks,
you would have been like, who's this mouthy idiot?
Who's throwing books at me?
Hey, read this.
Well, I did have, like, luckily I had a duplicate of me as in the form of a twin called Jonathan, who was also a book nerd. So we could at least be book nerds together. But like I said, I can't remember the teacher's name, but I was doing English Lit that year, and we had to write a story. So I was big into fantasy books. So my story was every fantasy story that had ever been written.
Oh,
like,
yes.
I've still got it somewhere on my hard drive. And basically it was like all the fantasy tropes you can imagine, but basically there was like this, I remember the main thing that I loved was there was this like prophecy of this like
love a prophecy
demon character coming back to life after all these years. And everyone just took it as like, that's like a conspiracy theory. That's nonsense, blah, blah, blah. And then right at the end, he comes back to life. In fact, he's been our protagonist the whole time. If you spell his name backwards, it's the same as the devil's character. Yeah.
Alucard, eat your heart out.
Exactly. And I was so I hadn't really written before that creatively. Obviously, I'd done schoolwork and stuff. But then, her feedback on that, my teacher's, was sensational. She was just like so crazy positive. I'm like, I've just ripped off the books I love. Like I kind of felt guilty.
That's how it starts.
Yes, dude.
That's how it starts. Like even like guys making movies and writers writing novels and comics and all these things, is that there's like, I wrote this because I loved X.
Yeah.
I wanted to pay my respect to this filmmaker.
Right.
And, this was my favorite. I loved this era of cinema, so my movie looks like it's all there.
Yes.
And that's like part of it is you love something, so you want to share it with other people and do your spin on it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's that what if thing. You take that thing, you go, but what if whatever. Cool. That's a whole new story now. Like no one's told that story, or if they have, you haven't told that story. So go for it.
Yeah. My favorite, this is not technically what we're talking about today. My favorite genre of story is like Fargo, which is one person makes one mistake that has nothing to do with this guy over here. And then it fucks up like 8 people's lives.
Yeah.
And so often when I'm writing something, I go back to the Fargo thing and being like, right, so where's the mistake?
Yeah.
So where's the problem come from? Oh, it's this guy over here, like who doesn't know this woman over here or this house here, but because of this and this, now the house is on fire.
Yeah.
Like
that's beautiful.
They're the stuff I love. And that's the thing is you go back to the thing that you love and you pull it out. And what I love is stories, Damo. There we go. We're back.
We're done it. All right, well, let's jump into our topic. So like you said, sort of that story in the everyday. So what initially inspired this topic for you?
Well, so it's interesting. So I work at the MCG.
Yeah.
My job is I train tour guides. So I train volunteers both for tours of the ground. We also have a museum, Australian Sports Museum. If you're in Melbourne, you should check it out.
Check it out.
There you go.
Tommy will be there.
Give my boss, if you listen to this, give me a raise. Actually, if you listen to this, I might get fired. So I work at the MCG. It was a job that I got at a bad point when I had no money. And I needed a job, and I just was like, it was just a customer service. I got the job, because I talked my way into it. I was applying for so many jobs at this point where we're obviously at uni together. I was there for a little bit.
Yeah.
This is that period in time, so things were going really good for me, as you know. So, again, to put it in more context, the day I got the job, 2 days later, my phone got disconnected. So I was like, this job came at the perfect time.
Right.
But it was one of those things where I had been applying for so many jobs, you just stop like reading them. You're just like, yeah, cool. If I get an interview, I can talk my way in. If I get an interview, I'll talk my way in. I go in, I sit down, and I don't know what this job is at all. Like, I know the name of the job.
Right.
It's just sort of like a customer servicey type job. But I'm like, you know what? I don't need to know. Like, I know what I have to do.
Right.
I've got the vibe of the job. I can answer all the questions. Great. And then the first question I got was from my current boss, and he was like, can you describe the role to us in your own words? And I'm like,
no.
I can't even describe the role in your words. So I just dug into my bag of things, what I love.
Of words.
Thing of words. And I was like, this job is talking. And I bullshitted my way through like a 5-minute segment of just being like, I'm a talker. I like to talk. This job is talking. It's talking to people. It's talking to this, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And I got the job, obviously.
Yeah.
And so that was that part. And since then, I've changed jobs throughout a number of roles, but always my job has been talking at some capacity. And so in the last few years, it's been talking with intent.
Right.
So I'm now, training tour guides. And so we obviously run these tours of the stadium. We get a lot of visitors coming through, school groups, English tourists, Indian tourists who love their cricket. We get footy fans coming through the footy. We get just people who are in Melbourne and on a holiday. So we get a whole range of people, and it's a really interesting place. There's a lot of stuff to learn. And we've got all these tour guides who are really great at what they do. And one of the reasons I love my job is because they're all volunteers, you don't have to overcome that hurdle of making them come to work. Because if they didn't want to be there, they don't come.
They wouldn't be there.
Yeah,
that's
and they
nice.
love it. And they feel connected to the club and the ground and all that kind of thing. So what I sort of did a couple of years ago before COVID was I was like, right, well, my background is writing, creative writing and screenwriting, and I like telling stories. So what can I use from here? Because I've got this degree that I'm now paying for because government changed the HEX threshold and now I owe the money.
Bastards.
How can I use my degree? Because I was thinking about this maybe 6 months ago, talking about like writing and being a writer, in inverted commas. And I was like, I'm a writer in progress. Sometimes I'm writing, sometimes I'm not. There are times when I've like had plays on and done stuff, or musicals, or I've written short stories and they've done something. And then there's times where I'm like, I'm just kind of figuring it out still.
Yeah, of course.
So I was like, how can I take that as part of what I do? And I was like, well, effectively what we're doing on these tours is we're just telling stories. Yeah. And we're telling stories to different audiences. All right. And we're telling stories in an engaging and all right, so how can we make the stories educational, engaging, entertaining, interesting, factually accurate, not boring? How can we use the strengths of the volunteers and their tour guides? And I was like, right, so I just basically came up with a program which just like what you're doing with the school kids is teaching a demographic of mostly 70 plus.
Yeah, great.
How to tell stories better. Yeah. And how to tell stories to a range of different audiences and how to keep it interesting and how to be engaging and how to, I guess, take something that is not necessarily what you would view as being like a story in that I'm here to tell you now about the history of a stadium and about light towers.
Yeah. It could all be facts.
It's all facts.
Yeah.
But it's how to present that. And one of the big things that I've really focused on is a lot of what our tour guides do is they have great memories and knowledge bases.
Right.
And I've learned so much from them. But what a lot of them have is they have the stat.
Yeah,
The stat. And
They've almost got too much knowledge.
That's it. So it's like, how do you filter out what the knowledge you've got? But then also, I'm not interested in the stat. The stat's cool.
Yeah.
I want to know the story behind the stat.
Yes.
So why does that stat matter to you? Why does that stat matter to this? And why is it going to matter to the person you're talking about?
Yeah.
So you start there and then you start unpacking. And then so from there, it's been the tour guides and now we've been rolling it out to museum volunteers. And my plan for domination, which I've explained to my boss, is that I want all these stories between all the different offerings we have to like connect and link. And so
that would be awesome.
You go on like a journey through the MCG. You go to the museum and you're like, oh yeah, tour guide talked about this. Here's a bit more about it. Or here's this from a different perspective.
And here's how it's almost that Fargo thing. So hopefully nothing's gone wrong.
Yeah.
It is like, and that's how this thing that seems completely unconnected to this thing, guess what? They're two dots of the same dot to dot. They actually connect. It creates a big picture.
Time is a flat circle, Damo. We're in the middle of it.
Oh, fuck
so
yes.
that's my goal. And I and I love it, and it's ruined my life in a good way.
Okay.
Because now I can't not see it.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Because it's like, I don't know if you've ever had this when you're studying like film and stuff, and friends will be like, can you watch shit things? And I'm like, yeah, I absolutely can.
Yeah.
To a certain degree.
Right.
It gets hard. Some of the stuff that I watch that I'm like, I love this, I can't watch anymore. But it makes you appreciate the good stuff
That's
more.
it, dude. Yeah, yeah.
So I think, I appreciate good storytelling, particularly through sport. Like, again, this is all... people are going to listen to this podcast, find me and just give me a wedgie. But sport is a story. Everything is a story. Cooking is a story.
Yeah.
Buying a car is a story. Everything is a story. You've just got to work out who your audience is and how you're telling it. That's it, right?
Exactly. But like that's
profound.
But like no, I couldn't agree more. Like you look at the biggest entertainment, like sport is entertainment.
Yep.
You look at any of the big entertainment industries, stories at the root of all of them. Obviously film and TV, that's a no-brainer. But for sport, we don't care because this group of guys kicked more goals than that group of guys. We care because we love these group of guys. We know what they've gone through to get here. Like everything that like it is all the story behind each and every element of each character, each team, each club, like all of it. Like what the friggin' weather was that day, how this team plays in the weather. Oh, we know he doesn't like, whatever it is. It's like there's all these details which all make story, which factor into why it's entertaining. It's like, it's why you take someone who's not into sport or think they're not into sport, let's say, and drop them into any average game. Yeah, they're not going to have as good a time as someone who's been following it for decades. No. Because they know all the stories. They know the why of it all that you're talking about. Yeah. And that enriches it so much more to make it the level of, like, operatic entertainment that it is.
Damo, sport is it's the bold and the beautiful.
Yes,
like it is
soap
that
opera.
soap
Yes,
opera.
mate, yeah.
The emotions are ridiculous. The outfits are absurd. But it's also like the weirdest fantasy because the lore is so deep and rich. And cricket is impenetrable if you don't know what's happening.
Right. But there is that superhero element to it as well,
I love all sporting. It's looking at it like this, like looking at stories and storytelling and training these tour guides to find these stories in the everyday has actually given me a greater appreciation of not just story, but actually sport.
Right.
Like I now will watch sports and be like, oh, I love this. This guy's just come fifth, right? He's come fifth at the Winter Olympics. He's never seen the snow. Oh my God, I love this. I love this strange man from Egypt who's never seen the snow and he's come like... Everyone is Eddie the Eagle to me now.
Yeah,
like, it's so
that's
good.
Powerful. Oh my God.
But like, and to, I guess, get really into it, the example that I have used and all the examples that I use are always like, all right, here's a stat. So for an example, one of the things we talk about obviously on the tour is the great Sir Donald Bradman. So if you don't know much about cricket, he's one of the best cricketers to ever play, if not the best cricketer to ever play the game. He's been knighted for cricket. That's how good he was at cricket.
Right.
And so a stat that is impenetrable, if you don't know what I'm talking about, is that Donald Bradman, when he retired, had a batting average of 99.95. So that means that the way he batted when he played cricket, that on average, he would score 99.
Yeah.
Which is absurd. So if I say 99.95, you go, I understand that. And I'm like, right, put that in a bit of context, which is, we're talking before about making words up. Put that into context. The best current player right now, I think, averages 60.
Right.
So, and this guy batted in the 40s. Like, he was playing cricket in the 40s and 50s. So you're like, 30s and 40s, sorry. So you're like, okay, so he's, all right, that's the scale there. But that's still just a stat. The interesting thing about his batting average, Damo, is he needed, in his final ever game, he needed 4 runs. And his average would be 100. For his last ever game, he went out for a duck for 0, first ball. So... that's interesting.
Yeah.
What's interesting again too is that he needed 4 runs. The most common shot or score that Bradman made. So in cricket, you hit the ball, you can score 1 run, 2 runs, 4 runs, or 6 runs, depending on where you're hitting the ball. You can score 3 runs as well, but that's a bit weird. Doesn't happen a lot. The most common shot he played was 4.
Yeah.
Like they were he never hit 6s because you can get caught if you hit it in the air. If you hit it along the ground, no, I'm going to score a 4. So he needed 4. It was his most common shot. He goes out for a duck, which didn't happen a lot in his career. Yeah. So that's interesting. But then the story behind that is that everyone knew it was his last ever game. And when he came out on the ground, the English players actually made a guard of honour for him. And the story goes, and again, don't know if this is true or not, but I don't care.
Yeah.
The story goes is that he was so overcome, he got quite emotional. Standing out there, he had tears in his eyes and just missed the ball, like just missed it.
Yeah, right.
Clean bowled.
Oh my God.
So it's this great thing of like, all right, we start with a bunch of numbers. And it's the same with anything. It's like you start with Usain Bolt breaking the world record at the 2008 Olympics. You got the record, it's really fast, it's incredible. Then there's the great story behind it. Didn't like any of the food at the Olympic Village, so the only thing he ate there was chicken nuggets from McDonald's.
Yeah, great.
He won a gold medal. He won 3 gold medals and broke a world record.
After days of eating chicken nuggets.
That's it, right?
Yeah,
so it's all those things. It's like you look at a football score, whether it's AFL, round ball, rugby, whatever, a sporting score.
Yeah.
And you go, right, there's the score. But it's like that doesn't tell you how close it was in the final minute. That actually this team was winning all day. And then in like the last 5 minutes, these guys went berserk. Or that doesn't tell you that, you know, this guy went down injured. And actually there was some controversial things. And like this guy kicked his first ever goal. Or this woman kicked her first ever goal. Or this player here, she's never played in a final. Like you don't get all those little bits until you pull it back. So that's what my ambition is, and that's what I've been with doing all these volunteers. Is I've been getting them to don't just tell me a stat. Yeah. Stats. It also comes back to who's your audience, because some people just want stats.
Yes.
Some people are like, what is the number? But assume they don't.
Yeah.
Because generally, my understanding of it is, if someone loves stats that much, they'll ask.
Right. Yeah.
Like if they really want, if they really want to know, they'll ask you. So don't worry.
Or they already have it.
Or they already know.
They might still ask in the hope that they get to give their own answer.
They want to test you out. That's my nightmare when I take tours, and because I'm a bit not loose with the truth, but I'm a bit like I'm a big fan of about. Yeah. So it's about 100 down, like, because, you know,
right.
The journalist rule that if it's you know if it's 101, it's over 100.
Yeah. But again, like that's the beauty of storytelling, and just like to go back to those sporting stories you were talking about, like what I love about them is like, and this is sort of the difference between say a written story and the stories of the everyday, is that for any of those stories you could say, oh, you couldn't write that, but you could. It's just that you go, oh, well, yeah, of course that's what happened. You wrote that. Like, of course you went for the most, emotional thing, or you went for the most out there thing we could think of. You're like, yeah, but I didn't write this. No one wrote this. Happened. Yeah. Like Donald Bradman went out for a duck on his final. Like that's insane. That's awesome. Like, and so the power of it being the everyday and it being real hits so much harder. It is that thing of, you know, your guy from Egypt who's coming in. Yeah, of course I could write it. Like I go, oh, that's a nice idea for a story.
Yeah.
But the fact that this freaking happens, you're like, tell me everything. Like now I need to really know how this strange circumstance came about.
That's why I love the Olympics so much. Like I measure time in the Olympics.
You famously measure time in the Olympics.
That was 2 Olympics ago. That's a long time.
Yeah.
But like I love the Olympics because you get the Eddie the Eagles. You get the stories of, because I think in order to go to the Olympics, you have to be a little bit psycho.
Yeah.
Because I think there's like there's like 3 tiers of like you're really good at sport, you're great at sport, then there's a gap.
Yeah.
And then like Michael Jordan's up there.
Yeah.
Where there's a part of you that is just wired differently.
Right.
And so there are so many interesting stories about how these people operate. Like, isn't that fascinating that this guy, you know, like he took Michael Jordan once played one of the best games of his career because he imagined that his opponent said something mean to him. And it didn't happen. And he knows that it didn't happen.
Wow.
But he imagined it in his head. Like, those kind of things, like Serena Williams won a Grand Slam while pregnant.
Yes.
Like, these are these things that are just like, you don't sort of realize. Like, Ash Barty just retired recently. She's the world number 1. This is the second time she's retired.
Right.
She was like a teenager. Yeah. Like, I can't do this. Retired. Played cricket for a while. Was very good at cricket. Came back, won tennis.
Became number 1 again.
Unlocked tennis forever.
Yeah.
So, it's. I think there's so many fascinating stories about that level, the elite level.
Yeah.
But also the people who are like, I'm at the Olympics and I'm just here.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at this. My country doesn't have great representation in it. And I think that's why I love, as an Australian, the Winter Olympics, because the stories are fascinating. Because we don't have snow.
No.
We do, but you've got to find it.
Yeah. Or we make it.
Or we make it. Or you're practicing in a lake, like a dam, the jumping off like a bench table tower thing into water to practice ski jumping. Like, I think that's the appeal for me, is that, and I know people sort of go, oh, well, sport, it's all very, you know, there's this real, dumb feels harsh, but asinine feels pretentious. Okay. But it's in that wheelhouse.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Where people, it's the sports ball.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
That thing?
Yeah.
Oh, sports ball. Or like, I remember during a grand final one year, an author tweeted, oh, well, I'll be reading a book. And it's like, you can do both.
Yeah, right.
Like, I love books
so
much.
Yeah.
I love books as much as I love Olympics.
Yeah.
Like, you can do both, but also...
Well, because they're both still story. Like, that
That's it.
author's
That's
missing a
it.
trick because you're saying, oh, I won't be watching that story. I'll be reading a story. You idiot. They're both story.
And I get that for a lot of people, the barrier to sport is the fan base and the culture around it.
Sure.
And I think what's been really good to change that has been the rise of women's sport in the last few years.
Yeah.
In that I think the environment for that is a lot nicer, a lot better, a lot more accepting. Like, you compare sort of going to an AFLW game at the moment it's great. The vibe is so good, so chill. They're very accepting of anybody. And there is still kind of that kind of macho-y, bullshitty energy to sport. But we can change that.
Yeah.
But don't let that be the barrier.
That's it.
Even if that stops you getting all the way in, there are always going to be people on the out there who will come with you on that journey. And
Yes.
you can learn.
Yeah.
You can learn these great stories and
Yeah.
and find those things and find those communities that are a lot more understanding. And I think it is shifting. I'm trying to smash it all from the inside, which is my other task. Is I am working tirelessly with a demographic of mostly 75 plus
Your army of 70-year-olds.
white men
Okay.
who definitely vote uppercase liberal for Australian listeners, just because that's the demographic.
Yeah.
And I'm pushing the women's sport. Get behind it.
Good on you.
I had one of my volunteers tell me that his favourite sporting memory at the MCG, and he's 80, so he's seen a few.
Right.
His favourite sporting memory was a couple of years ago, was the Women's T20 World Cup final. He's like, I've never experienced an atmosphere like that. And he's like, we were part of history. And I'm like, yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
See? All the stories are there.
Right. It's still sport. It's still story. And yeah, I love that. And like, even how we were saying at the start, like, story is for everyone. Everyone can learn story.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
similarly, because it is still story, everyone can learn sports. Like, it's all about exactly what you're talking about, is for those people who feel like, the culture's threatening or whatever, you're like...
And I get that. 100% I do.
Sure.
It's true. It's true.
I, as a fully grown white man, go to a footy game and be like, uh-oh. But I do think it's changing. But also it's like, well, let's hopefully that'll change, or we'll push that aside or whatever. But behind that is that why that you're talking about, getting them into like, let me tell you the why of this is so amazing.
Yeah.
And then as soon as anybody clicks into that, they're going to love the game, whatever game it is. I don't even care. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, one thing I've loved to see is the rise of Ted Lasso, and seeing like not only just the adoration for this show, which we obviously adore.
We love. Great show.
Love with all our hearts. But like,
Teddy.
the amount of tweets and stuff I've seen about people being like, holy crap, I gave soccer a go and it's amazing. And you're like, yes. Dude,
See, Ted Lasso got people into soccer.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing, is that yes, there are barriers and there are things that for whatever reason, and people go, I don't know the rules. It's like, you know what? Some people who've been following this sport their entire lives also don't know the rules.
Yeah.
You just, all you need to do is pick the one element of the story. So it's like, all right, you don't know the rules of this game. See that girl over there? She's coming back from like a knee injury. We're going to watch her today.
Yep.
She's kicked a goal. Everyone's got around her because she's coming back from it. Like, this is a big moment for her. Or like this girl here, she plays, like, not only is she a great footballer, she's a speed skater. Like, how crazy is that? So it's all about finding those little ins. Just focus on the one little thing, and I think it's working. I think there's always going to be resistors to stuff, but what I found really awesome is that a lot of the stuff that I'm teaching, and I build my knowledge base, because these guys have got 45 plus minimum years on them. Like one of the volunteers, he sadly died last year, but one of my favourite volunteers was a museum volunteer who served in World War II.
Wow, shit.
So he served in World War II, and one of his favourite sporting memories is when he was 10, he went and watched Don Bradman play cricket. Like, this is how long this guy...
Yeah.
And so he's got all these great stories and all these great facts and all these great pieces of information. And it's about, well, how do we get them... Because he's, as I said, he's died.
Yeah.
But he got those stories go to the people that he tells in that museum, who tell their friends, who tell their friends, and look, it changes each time.
Sure,
a bit of that, whispers game happens where you're spreading along a story and it changes. But you know what? The heart of it's the same.
Exactly.
So by the time it comes back around, it's like, oh well, that was close enough.
Yeah,
we got there.
exactly.
There's a great quote from a book called French Exit, which is made into a film with Michelle Pfeiffer. I've not seen the film.
Okay.
There's a quote that talks about people don't like cliches.
Yeah.
But this character's like, no, cliches are beautiful because a cliche is a story that gets more hopeful in its retelling.
Ooh.
And I think that's what these kind of cliche story moments are, is that each time, and this is my focus less on sort of the written word and more on spoken word kind of stuff. But each time you go on these people go on a tour. You can go on every tour we run that day with a different guide. The skeleton would be similar. The facts would be accurate and the same. The stories would be all different.
Yeah,
you get a different experience every time. And you might only remember two of those things. And then you're at the pub with your mates and you tell one of them. And then they go home to their wife and they tell her, and then she's at work and she tells a customer, and that customer goes home and tells their kids, and then their kids are telling that at school, and then the teacher hears it and he tells his mate online who lives in America, and then all of a sudden this guy's working at a coffee shop. Like it spreads. It's a good pandemic.
Yeah. Well, that leads us nicely to something else I was hoping to talk about, which is the reason this works, the reason why I think, your volunteers should be learning this stuff, like everybody. Like I wish you could take whatever you're teaching your volunteers and literally just run courses for anybody, because I do think learning story, learning elements of story, learning the power of story helps anybody in any situation. Like it's one of those fundamental things that exist in our society that most people don't think about, even though they're getting hit in the face with it every day. Like whether it's at work and they're just, there's that one guy everybody loves. Why? Because he's a fucking great storyteller, or they're going home and watching entertainment. Obviously the thing that got us through the pandemic was stories. Like we all turned to stories, So like the power of story to me is huge, and I love the sort of the spoken. It's pretty easy to focus on the written version, be it in books or screen or what have you, but the verbal spoken word version obviously has lasted for a lot longer. Yeah, and so like the idea of the myth or the monomyth in these stories being told and like it's spreading like a pandemic, like I love that side of it. Like it makes me think of one thing you and I have like both learned about and discussed previously is. Story structure. Yeah, which I don't know if you go over that at all with your guys.
We do a little. So it's yes and no. So for the tour guides, I don't do heaps because if they've become tour guides, they have to sort of go through a process and we train them up broadly. And so they're already good at public speaking. They already have an interest in public speaking. For some of the museum volunteers, their interest is they love the history and they love sport. Yeah. And some of them are good at it, but they kind of aren't quite as polished or as slick. So I just came up with a really basic, which ironically we started teaching to school kids during the pandemic because we're like, we need a program because they can't come visit us. Which was just 3 bits, 3 chunks, no big 3-act structure stuff.
Yeah, no hero's journey, none of that.
It was just every story, whatever you're telling it about, it's going to have 3 things. It's going to have a hook, which is how you're going to get me in. It's going to have the guts, which is what's the actual juicy part of the story. And then you're going to have a button at the end so that I know it's over.
Lovely.
And so the way we were training them on the structure, I was like, the hook, do that last. Do the hook last.
Okay, yeah.
Because work out what the guts of the story, what is your actual story? Because then you can make your hook relate to that.
Yes.
So how does it connect so that, you might ask me, I might ask you a question that I know you don't know the answer to, but you want to find out. Yeah. So then I'm like, hey, here's the guts of the story. And then here's the button at the end, which means that conversation's over. That's the end of the story. You've walked away. Oh, that felt like a complete conversation. Or you can now ask follow-up questions.
That's brilliant.
But that's literally what we did. Is we just gave them those 3 little bits, and some of the tour stuff we gave them a bit like some more sort of structure. And I'm very big on making sure that the start of whatever you talk about at the start of the tour, try and find a way to talk about it at the end.
Brilliant.
So it's all connected, and people feel like, oh, cool, that related to the start. As classic storytelling does.
Yes, dude. Yeah.
Because the way I see it is that we've got on these tours, you've got over 150 years of history of the ground. You've got like 180 plus years of the MCC.
Right.
And then beyond that, you've got all the indigenous history of the area before that, and sports in general. There's so much you can unpack and unpick, and it's just about just pick 3 things and make sure they're all linked. Yeah, because otherwise this tour will go for 5.5 minutes. Right? So in answer to your question, a little bit of structure, but none of sort of the real.
No, but I see that's what that actually ties in beautifully with what I was going to say. So I was going to talk about how like the origins of story structure, as you would know, is this guy Joseph Campbell who wrote the book Hero with 1,000 Faces, where in it he basically what he had done was gone around the world and looked at mythologies from all different sort of societies and communities and groups and this sort of stuff, all originally done through oral tradition, and basically like compared them, analyzed them, looked at the factors that were the same in all of them. And I love that was his method for figuring out story structure. It wasn't like, here's what I think is best. It was like, no.
What are you all doing?
Right.
Oh.
Interesting. And like, I love even the idea that like these communities, which obviously had never met, they were like decades apart, thousands and thousands of kilometers apart, like they were so different, but because it's almost like this is the way humans tell stories.
Yeah.
It's like there's this organicness, naturalness like to it that I find really appealing and really like, again, there's a magic to that like, oh no, humans can't help but tell stories. It's like, this is the way that humans connect with story. And I really love that. And so from that, he obviously made The Hero's Journey.
Yep.
And since then there have been countless other iterations of the same thing. To me, it's always like looking at the same structure, but from a different angle, whether it's 5-act structure, 7-act structure, Dan Harmon's story circle, 3-act structure, all of it. It's all the same thing. It's just different lenses on the same thing. And hearing you talk about the hook, the guts, and the button, it is still the same thing. Like I was getting giddy hearing you say that, because to your volunteers, they're not like, oh, I have to be very literate here, and I might just want to tell a story, mate, and you're bogging me down with 3-act structure, inciting incident, first act turn, all this sort of stuff. No. All you got to do is think about these 3 things, and it's like when I teach my students, it's very much the same. To begin with, I like literally just introduce it as beginning, middle, and end, which is no different from hook, guts, button.
I just put fun names on
it. Yeah, you've done well there. I've got to start using those. But it's like, and then from there I'll be like, or it could be like the character discovers a want, the character tries to get the want, the character either gets the want or something happens, they can never get it again. Like those are your 3 parts still. Like it's still all there. It's just different labels for the same thing. And so hearing you talk about that really generally got me like excited, because this is like, to me, it's like, well, you can tell stories other ways without using any kind of structure or whatever, but like we won't connect to it. And here's where the power of story really comes in, is that connection. Yeah. And I think what's really interesting is like it can be used for really, really good stuff, like educating volunteers in how to communicate with the people coming through on their tours, or education in general. Like, we all remember the teachers who were great educators, and chances are very good they were excellent storytellers.
100%. The Mr. Boyle I was telling at the start, that was his. Yeah. He was fantastic at that sort of stuff.
Right.
And the other thing too is he gave a shit. And that's the big thing I push with all the volunteers. It's like, well, tell stories that matter to you. If they matter to you, they're going to matter to somebody else.
Yes, yeah.
Because literally you and I getting excited about our own enthusiasms for this topic, that's it. If someone else cares about something, I want to care about it.
Yeah.
You give a shit. So
right.
Let's build you in. But no, I think the fact that no matter how, and even when you do tell these stories that are non-linear or play with structure and all these kind of things, they still have to start with structure. When they wrote Memento, they didn't go, all right, we'll write it like this. No. They wrote it out and then they went, all right, and now we'll put it in backwards.
Right.
Like,
the structure's still there.
The structure's still there. You can make up words and irregardless of what other people say.
Yeah.
But you need to know that they're made up.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And so, so story just has this like crazy power to it. And like, again, I think it's such a thing where, this is why I'm so glad we're talking about this topic. It's like, it is in the everyday and people don't recognize it. But it is like every teacher who taught through story. Like stories are memorable. Facts, not so much. Like we get hammered with facts every day. But if you take those same facts like you're teaching your guys to do and twist them into a story, a week from now, people are still going to remember those facts.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
they might not necessarily remember the whole stat correctly.
Yeah.
And I'm a sucker for this. I get swept up in someone will give me a stat or like, hey, here's this interesting little tidbit. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then like a week later, someone will mention something like, oh, I kind of know something about that. So I don't remember the exact place.
Right.
But
let me tell you a story.
But hey, sounds good, doesn't it? And then you like someone will Google it and be like, you're 80% right. Like, yes. Sean does that a lot. I get fact checked by Sean a bit. He'll be like, yeah, you're close.
Yeah.
You're pretty close.
That's it. And then like, even in like, again, this is where like the everyday storytelling comes in, is like that ingratiating people to you. Like if you're in a new social circle and, someone's telling stories in an engaging way, they're going to be the life of the party.
Yeah.
And like for me, I know for myself, that's something that I've been more aware as that bookish teenager guy who was like, loved books, but maybe wasn't so good at talking to people. Like that's something I've definitely come to learn is like, well, if someone says, how's your day? And I go, well, I could just tell them the beats of my day, or I could go very quickly, what's the funny thing that happened today? How do I quickly tell them a story? Or like, don't even worry about today. Let me tell you about this other thing, like here's a story and it's ingratiating. Like something else that I do quite commonly, I don't know if you do this as well, is like, if a mate of mine has told me a very good story that's happened to them, I will 100% poach that story.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, a mate of mine, this happened to him. Like, everyone everywhere is like, oh yeah, this happened to it's my girlfriend or my brother-in-law was at the, like everyone's got a story that's someone else's that gets repurposed for an audience and like that's how you make friends. That's how you go to social. Like my girlfriend often jokes that it's like, we'll often say, oh, I know you're fine.
Yeah,
like,
I love that.
You'll be fine over there because you'll just talk to somebody and you'll become friends.
Yeah.
So you'll be fine.
I like the first time that happened to me, like I said, I don't think I was. My family are sort of, they're very chatty. The Robbs are generally very chatty people, but because I was sort of a bit bookish and whatever, I didn't really naturally have that. Or I did with people I was confident with, but people I wasn't as confident with.
Yeah.
And then somewhere along the way, the two sort of met. I got confident. I realized, story good, blah blah blah, and same sort of thing. I remember it was in like second year uni. I had these two mates, Jess and Lauren. If you're listening, hi.
Hi, Jess and Lauren. You changed Damo's life, maybe. We're about to find out. And so we went to a party of Jess's. It was her birthday party. And basically, we only really knew each other because we all we were doing the same course together. And so she turns to Lauren and says, hey, Lauren, by the way, here's this person you'll know there, this person you know there, this person you know there. So like, you'll be good. You have people to talk to. And she turns to me and said, you'll be fine. And I was like, I was the most chuffed I'd ever been because I had never thought I was that you'll be fine kind of guy. Learning you're a you'll be fine guy feels powerful, Damo. Yeah. You feel invincible.
Exactly. And this is why I'm like, the more everybody learns about story, the more they get to be that you'll be fine guy. Yeah. Like story is how we connect. It's how we relate to other people. And like, it is, like you said at the start, it's something anybody can learn. Anybody at all. Like we've all got the innate ability for it. We just need to hone it and get it sharper and all the rest of it.
Yeah. And you don't have to be, Robin Williams or Shakespeare or any of these sort of, you don't need to be the best stand-up comedian to tell us. Like just if you just focus on the bits that, like, again, the simplest way to get someone to engage with your story, whether it's through written word, spoken word, however you're doing it, is find why you give a shit about it.
Yeah.
That same thing. Because if you care, someone else is gonna.
Right.
Whereas if you don't care, no one else will.
Yeah.
Like if you can't give a shit about this story, no one else is going to give a shit about
right. And it's the same for, like, again, just to bring it to actual writing for any writers out there. Like, if you're writing a story that you don't care about,
throw it out.
Stop writing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Why are you putting... Yeah, I've written 120 words of this book that I hate.
Right.
Stop.
We should stop doing that.
Why have you written 120 pages? That's too many.
You should have stopped after page 5.
Oh, stopped after page 1. If you're like, oh, this isn't going well. The amount of times where I've been writing something, I'm like, oh, I don't really like this bit. Yeah. And I'm just like, I will delete it.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
it's gone.
And it's so freeing and good. And you're like, oh, I can do something better instead. Yeah. Like, that was the first idea I chose. There are infinite other options for how the next part of this story or whatever.
Absolutely. And it's slapdash and you rewrite it and you polish it. But yeah, that first go through, if you're writing something and you hate it, stop.
Yeah.
No one's going to make it. Again, if you have to write something,
right? Yes.
And you hate it,
yes. Then
rather than getting rid of it, you need to ask yourself, okay, why do I hate it?
Right. Or what is it about? Like,
what I've got to find something I like.
Yeah, exactly.
There's something in there.
Yeah. When I come onto somebody else's project, if it's TV or whatever, like, that's usually my starting point. Is, okay, this is someone else's. I know they've got their why, and hopefully they tell me it, and hopefully I connect with it. But in case I don't, what's my why? Why do I give a shit about
Sabotage,
this story?
I want to ruin their show. I'm going to get them cancelled on TV.
Yeah, baby. All right, I've got one more question for you, which is, so we're talking about everyday storytellers. Is there an everyday storyteller in your life that you've, like, clocked as, like, they're not a professional storyteller, but damn, they tell a good story?
Yeah, there's probably... So talking about the Robbs, so the Reeds are, and because I am one, I can say this, we are obnoxious and loud.
Okay.
Like, my dad is one of 7, and they're all, the base level of energy and enthusiasm they have for anything is me. And they go
Oh,
up.
shit.
So they're all big presences. They're all big, like, funny,
Do you know what I'm picturing
outgoing
here?
people.
Is off like a flock of seagulls at the beach.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
they got that energy.
But every bird is a different bird.
Oh, okay.
So not only is it
Even
not the
better.
same universal sound,
Right.
There's a seagull that sounds like a seagull, and there's a galah, and there's a toucan, and there's just a goose with a megaphone. Like, I love them, but
Yeah.
the reeds are big, and
Yeah.
anytime anyone I know has to meet them, I'm like, just a heads up, you're gonna feel like you're drowning.
Yeah.
Just go with it. Just
Right.
go with it. You're stuck in the rip. The trick for a rip is you let it take you
Yeah,
out to sea.
beautiful,
So
yeah.
my family are all big storytellers.
Yeah.
They all love, and it's interesting. So like my mum, her side of the family, also good storytellers, but just a bit quieter.
Yeah.
But my love of reading and stories comes from her in equal
Yeah,
measure to my
okay.
dad, because she was like, we love books.
Yeah.
I'll swap books with her. So that comes from her, and that love of that comes from her. But then, dad and his side of the family, all of them can spin a yarn.
Yeah.
But different. So my dad loves telling the amount of times where like you'll be at like a family event, whether it's like Christmas or it's someone's birthday. Actually, one of the best examples of this is when my grandfather died. My dad's dad.
Yeah.
We all went around to my grandma's house, and everyone came from everywhere, obviously for it, leading up to the funeral. And as people like organising the funeral, we're just having like pizzas and stuff in my grandma's tiny house.
Oh my God.
All sitting in this room.
There's all those birds, but they're not at the beach now. They're being crammed
They're
into a
in
tiny house.
And it started. Do you remember the? And that was. Do you remember that time that? No, that wasn't that. And because they're all part of it.
Yeah.
They all chip in and no, that wasn't. Oh yeah, and then what did he say? So one of the best ones was there was a story where they were going on a road trip, 7 of them in a station wagon,
Right.
and it's fucking hot.
Okay.
And as they're driving along, my granddad says, "Who can guess the length of the white line on the road?
Ooh.
If you guess correctly,
Yeah.
when we get to the next town, I will buy you an ice cream."
Oh, that's good.
So all the kids put in a guess, and he puts in a guess. My grandfather.
Yeah.
So they drive a little bit. They get to this town. Everyone gets out of the car, and my granddad, I cannot remember the number he said. Say he said 4 foot.
Okay.
And they're all like, okay, all right. So they get to the next stop. He gets out of the car. He walks the length of the line, and he is correct. Bang on. All their guesses are wrong. He's nailed it. He's got it right. Of course he does, because he knows how long it is.
Yeah.
But he has to get out and do this big theatrical performance to demonstrate
Right.
it. He then goes into the shop. He buys one ice cream. He eats it. They get back in the car. They keep driving.
Oh, that is superb.
And so that story got told, and I've told that in, a minute, 30 seconds, whatever. I reckon that story went for 20 minutes, because there was then the tangent of, but what about, which station wagon was it? No, it wasn't the one that you spewed up in, or that we hit that dog in. No, it was the one that Jared crashed. Oh, no, it was Bernard. You had that. Like, so it just was this thing. And I think, my dad's side of the family in particular are all storytellers.
Yeah.
And they would probably all say that. And some of them are musically talented. They're singers and they play instruments. And some of them, my Uncle Jared has like a secret language, because he takes rhyming slang and shortens it.
Yeah.
So like he just has a code. So talking to him is like talking to, Enigma the computer from World War II, but it's all like rhyming slang and strange little esoteric bits of stuff. So I think that's where my love of it came from, and you still get swept up in it.
Yeah.
And all the kids kind of have it in them as well, because you're part of that. And like Christmas just gone was so great to sort of get it all together, and it just got silly and very funny and So I think there's that. And then a lot of these volunteers and tour guides that I work with, they're just like, I go on their tours because part of my job is to make sure that they're doing the right thing. And you go around and I go, oh, that's a good trick.
Yeah.
That's a good little trick early on in the tour. And,
Right.
oh, that's an interesting one, because people don't want to be lied to, but they can be lied to a little bit. So you can tell them, we don't normally go here. Everybody goes here. So, those little tips and tricks come through as well. For storytellers. But like even going to see stand-up comedians, anytime you see they're telling stories,
That's
and
a great
they're
example.
so good at it. Like I've been to see David Attenborough just talking about his life.
Right. Yeah.
I cried. It was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, even like I've been listening to, I should say, or re-listening to Neil Gaiman's View from the Cheap Seats, which is his essays, just all these bunch of essays he's written over his whole career. And it's like amazing because listening to the whole thing, it slowly becomes like an autobiography. I don't think he's ever going to write an autobiography because that's not who he is.
Yeah.
But by listening to this, it almost becomes one, because even if he's like writing a foreword to someone else's collection of stories, or he's writing a speech for this for a library organization or whatever it is, like so much of the time he brings in himself. He tells stories about himself to emphasize his point, to give the why before giving the what, you know, like, and it's so great because I really love him as a writer. I'm a big fan. And so being able to get this feeling of not only does he give some great advice in this book, but also you get to feel like, oh, I know a bit more about him just because he can't help but use story to get the information across.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like you think of any teacher that you had that you connected with, any lecturer at a uni, they peppered their stuff with that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's it.
They weren't the teacher from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
No.
That guy's doing nothing
No,
for
and like
nobody.
you felt like you knew them a little bit.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of it. I think every time you tell a story, you give a little bit of yourself to somebody else, and then they give it to somebody else, but it's got them attached, and it's that kind of it's a bit wanky and a little bit hopeful and naive, and I'm painfully optimistic. That's just who I am.
Yeah, ditto.
So,
Yeah. Oh, mate, this has been awesome. I feel like we could chat all day, but we better stop wrapping up there. But thank you generally so much for coming in.
My pleasure, man.
And joining
my
me for
pleasure.
this chat.
I love to talk.
Yeah.
I love the sound of my own voice.
Good. Well, then hopefully you'll be more than welcome to come back for a future one.
For sure. 100%.
Oh, you're legend.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, if you'd like to hear more from Tom, you can check out his incredible podcasts, How Good's Footy and Scaredy Boys. New episodes every Wednesday and Friday, respectively. Or you can find him on Twitter at Awkward Treed. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Midday Pajamas, or feel free to send me an email at shorttales.podcast@gmail.com. Until next time, this has been Short Tales, and I've been Damian Robb.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
Hi, I'm Dory Shafrier, and along with Kate Spencer, I host Forever 35, a podcast about the things we do to take care of ourselves. Join us every Wednesday with guests like author Phoebe Robinson, chef Samin Nosrat, actress Busy Phillips, and even former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright. On Mondays and Fridays, we have mini episodes where we answer listeners' questions on everyday problems like how useful a butt mask really is, how to deal with a petty friend, or how to relax after a long day. So join us Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on Forever 35, where we're not experts, but we are two friends who like to talk a lot about serums.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.